if you actually think that this video was made at the last minute, keep in mind, whenever I get back to Big Time Rush, it's not really a last minute decision, because for me personally, when I made my Halloween schedule 2 years ago, I had last minute decisions on doing an episode involving Big Time Rush. But considering I've mentioned in my Big Time Tour episode review, that was part of Summerpalooza 3, where I mentioned about the Big Time Rush Halloween episode, I had to give my word or bounce by my words by doing an episode review of the Halloween episode. So if you really think that video was a last minute decision, no, it wasn't. And for me personally, this isn't really a last minute decision, since that this is part of the intro. And considering that this episode centers around ghosts and Ghostbusters themes, maybe there's a reason onto why I prefer the Ghostbusters method in other shows that aren't The Loud House. I'm really sorry about that video that I made back in July of 2022, mainly the Ghost vs. Phantom Freakout episode, but in all honesty, my perspective in The Loud House involving Ghostbusters just doesn't usually work, which is why there's no Ghostbusters related involving The Loud House when it comes to episodes. I'm not talking about the fanfic I did, it's mainly the episodes that I'm referring to. I'm just saying this right now that when it came to other shows, I think that they did the Ghostbusters method a lot more better in comparison to The Loud House, but I'm also planning on comparing that Ghostbusters episode or whatever to Across the Continents episode sooner or later, but this is about Big Time Rush. This episode, Big Time Terror, opens up with Carlos witnessing a ghost like everyone else, and he thinks ghosts are real, but no one believes him. Not only that, Gustavo told the boys that his mansion is flooded, so he decides to spend the night with them, which terrifies them a lot more than ghosts is. Well, when it comes to the perspective of others that aren't Carlos. As you can tell, Gustavo is a terrible roommate, or a friend with Big Time Rush, as you can tell. And to be perfectly real with you, the fact that Gustavo is only faking that his mansion is flooded because he didn't have a childhood like Big Time Rush. You know, it really feels real to think that when this show gets over the top and a lot more juvenile, it's not afraid to make the right decisions that actually makes this episode a lot more clever. And the fact that he was on the unwelcome hotel list, or the hotel unwelcome list, which means that he can't go to any LA hotels whatsoever, he had to resort to going to Big Time Rush's apartment. If you ask me, knowing full well that Big Time Rush's character Gustavo is a lot more over the top, I have to admit that he's actually a better character in comparison to Johnny's dad from Johnny Test. And the fact that he isn't a father and mostly a boss towards Big Time Rush is really saying something, that he's actually entertaining and written correctly, even in the state that he's in when it comes to the writing of this show. When it comes to the ghost plot of this episode, it's Mr. Biddles making sure that the people who are living at the Palm Woods or staying at the Palm Woods to stay calm, since that he's telling them that there is no ghost. Mainly the fact that he is lying, but at the same time, he wants to make sure that nothing bad is going to happen. Which also leads to Logan and Carlos going on Ghost Detective or doing paranormal activity involving the ghost itself. As for James and Kendall, they try everything to get Gustavo out of the apartment, since he wants to spend more days in the apartment than usual. Though then again, I did address onto why he's staying, but I've already talked about the plot and ghost plot of this episode. To tell you the truth, the Halloween episode that came out a season later was a lot more over the top, since it doesn't take itself seriously when it comes to realism. But since that this episode has realism in it, despite the fact that it's including paranormal activity involving ghosts, it really feels like that they were originally going to make this a Gustavo episode only, involving Gustavo annoying the Big Time Rush band, only for them to come up with a ghost idea that they couldn't be able to corroborate in an episode of its own, so they add that to the Gustavo episode. Then again, if it really focused on the Gustavo plotline, it would probably be cluttered with filler to the point that the ending wouldn't make up for how the filler just ruins the aspects of what makes an episode entertaining. It really shows that less is more important, and the filler that I've addressed and criticized in the years before, mainly my earlier years involving sitcoms, may have been a lot more overboard than it needed to be. I'm just saying that Big Time Watch's filler, even if this episode isn't really having any filler whatsoever, felt like it actually knew what it was doing when it comes to handling its characters and not going too far on the filler. When it comes to the ghost activity with Carlos, Logan, and Mr. Biddles, to be perfectly real with you, knowing full well that those always team-ups when it comes to characters who don't like each other, mainly Mr. Biddles not liking Big Time Watch that much, this is mostly bound to happen considering that Gustavo also team up with Big Time Watch from time to time. And whenever I see the ghost activity, I have to admit that it's actually entertaining, and the fact that Big Time Watch is willing to help out Mr. Biddles. Granted, it's only half of Big Time Watch that is helping Mr. Biddles up until the ending while the Fall Gang decide to stop the ghost. But still, it's really clever, especially since that there is no ghost. It's a girl named Stephanie Kane who is doing a no-budget horror film in order to succeed in her project, which she uses the Big Time Rush as the cast of her film. Then again, if you ever watch Paranormal Activity, mainly the first film and maybe its sequels, you will probably understand what type of project she's doing. Or other ghost shows, but still. They managed to team up with Stephanie in order to get Gustavo out of the apartment by scaring him with a fake ghost, which they succeed, which also leads to another song called Shot in the Dark, which it's an okay song. I prefer other songs, but at the same time, I don't put instrumental songs from bands as background music anymore. So you're gonna have to listen to the song yourself, even though that song, along with the other Big Time Watchers songs, are 13 years old. Say all you want about my choice of videos for this month, but at the same time, if it involves Ghost's terror and it's integral to the plot of the episode, then I'm going to review it regardless. And to be perfectly real with you, I have better alternatives, and this is a better alternative over other alternatives. Even though that it may be debatable on the fact that this month is going to be a lot more than it was in comparison to my 2021 Halloween schedule, this month is Summerpalooza 3 and Lonely's 25 Days of Christmas. So to be perfectly real, we're probably not going to see a schedule like this ever again, just like Summerpalooza 3 and Lonely's 25 Days of Christmas. Though then again, I always glorify what I do, mainly the fact that I just want to put a lot more passion into this, which is really saying something because Halloween felt like one of the last things I wanted to do, but here we are right now. I'm giving this episode a 7 out of 10.